Thank you for joining us today. As Ashley, thank you, Ashley, and thank you for Startwise for this opportunity. My name is Marcia Quintal. I'm not going to dwell too much on the intros. I'm having a few technical difficulties today, but I hope you guys will enjoy this presentation. So before I continue, I'd like to start with a bit of information about SEO analysts and their similarities between them and Sangomas. One consultation is never enough. We require regular consultations before we can give you a list of problems that need fixing. Find lost love. We use organic remedies so that people can find you, like you, and link back to you. See your enemies coming. We can show you who your competition is and track every word they make. Read the bones, one digit at a time. We analyze digits on a spreadsheet to interpret what is happening or about to happen. Package enlargement, no guarantees. We both sell content enlargement packages to get you to number one. So the SEO process for business is quite a tricky one, and you may have come across various other processes that might have been outlined to you online, and they're all well and all, and they can all definitely help you get the process started. But what I often find is sometimes the order in which we are given these processes doesn't necessarily line up. So I generally like to focus a lot more in the beginning on technical optimization. And as you can see, I've broken this down into three sections. We have the technical optimization, on-page optimization, and off-page optimization. A lot of the time we jump into the SEO basics very quickly without considering technical SEO. And to be honest, the technical SEO sometimes, in many instances, and even in terms of the opinions coming from Google, we are often recommended to look at technical SEO first. So with my presentation today, I'm going to start talking about technical SEO, and then we will work our way into the other aspects of on-page and off-page optimization. When it comes to technical optimization, we're going to make sure your website performance is essentially monitored and optimized. And when it comes to SEO basics, we're going to make sure you are indexing according for search engines so your content can be found more easily. So as we move on to technical SEO, fixing technical SEO issues before chasing the next big thing. This is the advice coming out of Google. And I think now with the recent changes we've seen in terms of SEO, in terms of Google search, many of the ranking factors, or not many, but some of the ranking factors now are pointing more towards performance, which means we now need to look at technical SEO a little bit more closely. So as we start off our checklist with technical SEO, we see the check Google page speed insights. So as we go through this document, you will see similar pages like this where I'm going to identify various tools and links that are related to the checklist points. So here we start with Google Page Speed Insights. And the reason why I start with Google Page Speed Insights from a technical point of view is, number one, performance is a ranking factor. And it's a big part of the user experience. If in many instances, if a user experiences a slow website, and if they're forced to wait an unusually long period of time for that website to load, they're most likely going to go elsewhere. So we do a quick check through something like Page Speed Insights to see how we are performing. Also, with Page Speed Insights, it can give you a good overall view of where you are from an SEO perspective to start off with in terms of looking at just your homepage. But then we also need to look at things like mobile-friendly testing. Now, Google has shifted indexing to mobile-first indexing, which now means it's more important than ever to make sure that your website is also mobile-friendly. And Google has also provided us with a tool for this. Unfortunately, the mobile-friendly tool is actually moving to another tool that Google already has built within Google Chrome, which is called Google Lighthouse. But in the meantime, you can still access Google's mobile-friendly test. You can paste in your URL, and then you can get a report on how mobile-friendly your page is looking. I also highly recommend that you find a good SEO tool. The free SEO tools that I generally recommend are SEMrush and Ahrefs, and I will explain to you why I've chosen those tools. But first, just to give you a quick little bit of insight into what it looks like when you are doing page speed insights, this is what you're going to be looking at, and it is very technical, but I think the most important thing would be to look at the first image there on the left, where we're looking at performance, accessibility, best practices, SEO. All of that will already give you a very clear indication if you are on the right track. So as you see here, performance is an issue, and we often see that when it comes to accessibility, best practices, SEO, most websites are doing relatively well, but we often see that there's a huge disconnect when it comes to performance, and which is kind of what we expect with the current technical SEO climate. As I mentioned, your mobile-friendly test is moving to what we call Lighthouse. Lighthouse is essentially a tool that's already built into Google Chrome. But if you want to make Lighthouse more accessible, you can add the Chrome extension to Google Chrome so that you can access those tools more readily. One of the first tools you might want to consider for SEO tools would be Ahrefs SEO tools. It's a very good platform to consider. You will find between Ahrefs and SEMrush very similar tools, very similar free subscription offerings. But the main difference lies in the limitations that each platform puts in place. I do encourage you to explore both and see which one you might prefer, or which one provides the tools that you use the most. I still lean towards SEMrush, as it is a really great all-in-one solution. The limitations are not so high that it feels too restricting, so you can actually get a lot done with a free SEMrush account. So looking at what you can do, mainly would be the site audit, position tracking, keyword overview, domain overview, and checking for your local listings. So with the site audit, you can crawl up to 100 URLs. Most websites, unless you're possibly in the e-commerce space, you probably wouldn't be reaching 100 URLs. When it comes to position tracking, you can only track up to 10 keywords. However, I do think this is more than enough. I think you should essentially focus on 10 keywords to begin with. And once you feel you have optimized those 10 keywords, you can swap it out for another 10 keywords. And you can just keep doing that without needing to upgrade your account. Keyword overview, again, there's some limitations in terms of how many searches you can do. The same applies to domain overview, but these are really great tools in terms of looking at doing competitive comparisons and analysis of how those keywords are performing. Impactful SEO is rarely executed by a lone wolf. This is why we do need to rely on SEO tools. SEO optimization is more than publishing content and building links. There are more than 200 ranking signals used by Google, and some of them require technical understanding of how websites operate. These SEO tools will essentially help identify technical issues and guide you towards finding those solutions that you need. So now that we've covered technical SEO, we move on to basic SEO. We start with Google, not just because they are number one, but also because other search engines rely on Google for importing SEO data, particularly Bing. Unfortunately, Google doesn't import data from other search engines in the same way, or it doesn't import data from other search engines at all. If you index with Bing, first you will have to repeat the indexing process with Google, which is why I recommend you index with Google first, because then you can, fortunately with Bing Webmaster Tools, you can import your data in to get started, which makes it much easier than having to double up on the setup process. So start by setting up Google Search Console, move on to set up Bing Webmaster Tools. And if you are using something like WordPress, consider an SEO plugin, particularly one like Yoast SEO. Index Now is also, there's a WordPress plugin, but Index Now is not exclusively WordPress. Index Now is actually developed by Bing. It's a new solution to SEO that helps send signals out to search engines so that they know to start indexing your content more quickly. If you are not using an SEO tool, you might need to consider generating a sitemap. But most platforms these days do provide the tools and plugins needed to generate those sitemaps for you. So this might not be something you really need, but just in case, there it is. Now we're going to start looking at submitting sitemaps and checking page indexing. I did mention that Index Now from Bing and Microsoft is supposed to help speed up the indexing process by sending these signals to search engines to start crawling your content. This is not a foolproof solution, so I still recommend that you consider double checking your indexing when you do. Here are just some quick screenshots to kind of give you an idea of what you might be looking at when you enter Google Search Console. First, you'll see the image on the left, and then you will, fortunately for Google Search Console, they put a text entry block at the top for you to, or a search bar at the top for you to insert your URL and inspect it right away. Otherwise, you'll just need to click on the menu and go to the URL inspection tool, paste in your URL, and then Google will start inspecting it. If all is well, you will see all these green ticks popping up. If your page is not indexed, it will come up gray, and you will just click where it says request indexing, and Google, you must just give Google time to process that request before you close the window. When it's finished processing that request, then you can close the window, and you'll know that Google will most likely go through that indexing process. Unfortunately for Google Search Console, your quota is quite low. So you can only inspect 10 to 12 URLs per day. And that can be a bit limiting, especially if you run into a situation where you may have got your website up and running. For argument's sake, let's call this an e-commerce website. You have gone and loaded 50 to 100 products on your site, but now you've realized after a year that Google hasn't indexed all your pages. Even though you have submitted your sitemap, Google hasn't indexed all your pages. This can happen where you've submitted your sitemap to index. They're most likely going to index your main pages, but as an e-commerce site, there's no guarantee that they'll get around to crawling and indexing all your product pages. which now leaves you in a position to have to start manually indexing your pages or your product pages one by one. And that can be time consuming. And if you can only do 10 to 12 URLs per day, it's going to take you a couple of weeks to resolve that issue. So this is why I suggest manually submitting your URLs to Google. Each time you create a new page or new product page, submit that URL to Google as soon as possible and double check within 24 to 48 hours that that page has been indexed. Usually it can happen very quickly, sometimes in less than 24 hours, but it all depends. Fortunately, Bing Webmaster is also quite simple when it comes to submitting URLs. They don't give you the search bar or the right off the bat, so you've got to click submit URLs. But what we do like about Bing is that you can submit up to 10,000 URLs per day, and you can bulk submit. There are ways of bulk submitting URLs for Google. Unfortunately, it's a way more technical process. And unfortunately for us, Bing has made this a slightly simpler process. So if you do need to index a lot of URLs with Bing, you can just use this feature and make it a little bit easier. Next, we're going to talk about keyword research. I'm going to highlight a few of the tools that I use to help me with keyword research. I've already highlighted to you the SEO tools that I use, like SEMrush and Ahrefs, that have significant tools to help you with keyword position tracking and content. But because these tools are not necessarily made for South Africa, we need to use other tools to refine our research a bit better. And this is why sites like Google or Google Trends is still quite beneficial. And the other tool that I like to use for keyword search queries is one called Answer the Public by Neil Patel, who's a very well-known thought leader in the SEO space. So when you look at something like Google Trends, you can put in various keywords. You can put in up to 5 keywords, and it will you can specify that you want to look at search queries within South Africa. You want to look at search queries within the past 12 months, and then you can get a nice graphical interpretation of how those keywords are performing. So this is why we call it Google Trends. As you can see in the past 12 months, how the trend towards the search for AI tools has gone up in comparison to the tools we might have normally relied on, such as your marketing tools, writing tools, SEO tools, or social media tools. And this is, so it paints a clear picture of how that trend around that search term is developing. And you can use this for any group of keywords related to your business or your product offering. If you don't have long-tail SEO strategy, you're missing out. This quote now leads me to Answer the Public, where unlike Google Trends, where you're going to put in, you can put in long-tail keywords, but Google Trends is probably not going to help you so much with things like getting research on long-tail keywords, because generally long-tail keywords are not necessarily always your high-volume search queries, but they're still very valuable in terms of tapping into more SEO organic traffic. So a tool like Answer the Public is very handy because you can enter in your topic, your keyword, whether that is I generally choose to do a more organic, shorter version of the keyword. You can look within South Africa, and then it will give you a list of questions that are high search queries, or it gives you an indication which ones do have higher search queries, and it can also paint a nice picture in terms of how you might want to break down your content. What questions are people asking? What solutions are they looking for? So very quickly, just by putting in your basic keyword, you can find out a lot about what search queries are being asked around that particular keyword. And this is really helpful in terms of finding the right structure for your content and the information for your users and targeting those search queries. So I do highly recommend you use something like Answer the Public in doing your keyword research. Move on with on-page SEO. There are other technical aspects that you might want to improve on. We look at optimizing meta titles and descriptions. We look at optimizing headings and content. And we look at optimizing images for SEO. All of these do tend to get quite technical. It does often mean you have to get into the back end of your website or your content management system to start making these changes. But there are online tools that can still help us identify where these issues. Here I've highlighted a few extra tools. As much as SEMrush and Ahrefs can also assist you in improving meta titles and descriptions, headings and content, they'll also identify which pages are missing the meta titles and descriptions, which pages are missing headings, which pages might be too light on content. All of that information you can get from SEMrush and Ahrefs, but there are other tools that you might want to also try and use. Another set of tools that I think is very helpful is the SEO review tools. Again, very similar. It can help you with meta titles and descriptions, headings and content. But if you are looking for if you're looking just to do a quick review of your meta titles and descriptions, something like metatags.io is also a great tool to just quickly get a bird's eye view of how things are looking. The reason why I like something like metatags.io is it gives you a more visual interpretation of what they are seeing on your site. It shows you what is the feature image for that page, as well as the meta titles and descriptions. And this brings me to my point in terms of optimizing images for SEO. Another tool that I like to use, TinyPNG, has got an online tool and it has a plugin for websites that operate on WordPress. The WordPress plugin is very handy because as you are uploading your images to your site, TinyPNG is automatically optimizing those images. If you haven't already optimized your images, you can install TinyPNG and you can start going through the process of optimizing. Unfortunately, it does limit how many images you can optimize per month. So if you have a lot of images in your library already, it might take you a couple of months to fully optimize everything on your site. But it is a great tool. It's a great online tool. If you want to use it, if you aren't using a plugin, you can upload your images and re-download them optimized and then upload them to your site. So it's a great tool for helping you optimize images along the way. And one of the often overlooked SEO opportunities has to do with images, in the sense that many of our websites rely on images for that visual stimulation. But the images can often slow down your website loading if not compressed or if you're not using the correct image formats. Fortunately, tools like TinyPNG don't only compress, but sometimes they will also offer you a tool that does even convert it to a more appropriate format. Ultimately, you want to avoid large images. If you had your site for many years, you might want to really consider optimizing your images so that you can get better page speed performance, remembering that page speed and performance are now ranking factors. So if you do not optimize your website, you're going to lose performance and possibly rankings within Google. So we would like to try and avoid that. As an extra, I wanted to share some of the content tools that I like to use. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the various generative AI tools available. I'm sure everyone here has probably heard of ChatGPT by now. Bing Chat, I highly recommend as well. As much as I love ChatGPT, I think Bing Chat is surprisingly detailed and insightful, and I've often found it can do very good comparative it can give you very good comparisons in terms of data and information depending on what you're asking. Even from an SEO perspective, it can sometimes do those comparisons without you having to go into too many tools. And then another, some of you may have already heard of Google's AI tool. I know it hasn't been as used readily by the public as something as ChatGPT, bard.google.com if you'd like to check it out. But another very handy AI tool that I've been using, a personal AI tool, has been pi.ai/chat. It's a much more conversational AI tool. It's great for bouncing ideas or getting answers to general questions. But at the same time, if you're using something like ChatGPT, which tends to start to become or start to sound a little bit too AI, a little bit too monotonous, something like personal AI helps to bring back a little bit of that conversational human element into what you're talking about, and sometimes can help you restructure what you are saying to sound more conversational. But it's a great tool across the board. I definitely recommend you try it out. Other tools that I rely on a lot, Grammarly is really great at optimizing in terms of your content, getting it well written. And another tool, AIPRM, is a very handy prompt management tool. It provides a library of prompts that can be used for ChatGPT, Bard, Midjourney, and DALL-E 3. It's also used by organizations like Adobe, Microsoft, and Intel. But I encourage you to go and look at some of the prompts that are there, and you might find them very useful, not just for SEO, but for a number of tasks. If you are dabbling in the design space, I highly recommend you look at Adobe Express. I'm sure many of us have already explored Canva. If you are more of a traditional creative like myself, you might lean towards Adobe, but these are all great tools to really get your content generation going as well. Social may be sexy, but search still pays the bills. And this is still, I would say, very much true. I do think social is starting to pay the bills more and more for some people, but I do think, looking at the stats that we put in front of ourselves, majority of searches still start with Google. We haven't quite yet made a full paradigm shift from social to from search to social. So yeah, so search is still very important. Off-page SEO. So off-page SEO is a more tricky aspect of SEO. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with optimizing social profiles. I recommend that you have all the appropriate social accounts that you need. I'm not saying that you need one across every single social media network, although it would probably be beneficial if you could. But what I do like to sometimes recommend is something like Linktree when you are considering link building through social. Not all social media platforms provide the same level of link building. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter provide a great space for link building. Unfortunately, Instagram does not provide that same space for link building. Your opportunities for link building are on Instagram are a little bit more limiting, or you've got to be a little bit more strategic about how you go about link building on a platform like Instagram, which is why I recommend Linktree. Usually on an Instagram profile, you can only show one link. Many websites will opt to link to their company page, but you might want to consider linking to your Linktree page where you can list all the appropriate links from website to social and let the user decide maybe what is their preferred touch point. Now, when we look at optimizing business listings, again, this starts to become quite tricky, but I'll explain to you why I've listed these three in particular, although it may seem quite obvious. Google Business is very important so that when someone searches you on Google, your Google Business listing comes up as well, and that will also help improve your organic search and traffic. I think many people don't realize that that Google Business and Bing Places offer the same sort of listing opportunities. Especially here in South Africa, I think a lot of us haven't really gone onto Bing Places and listed our businesses there. And it's still very important for you to index and list your business through platforms like Bing, because Bing is often used by the alternative search engines in terms of indexing sites. So some other search engines don't necessarily go through the same process that Google and Bing does. They will rather crawl other search engines and directories like Bing to build up their search indexing. So it's important to index or list your business on Google and Bing. Listing your business on Apple is also very interesting. Obviously, if you want to be visible on Apple navigation elements and apps, it's important, but it's also important because a business listing on Apple is also used by devices like Siri. So when you want Siri to search for places, Siri is tapping into businessconnect.apple.com to get that information. So you will want to ensure that your business is also listed on Apple so that you are at least tapping into possible audio searches as well. SEO is not something we do once. It's part of our everyday digital processes. And yeah, I think a lot of people and businesses enter into SEO thinking it's a once-off process. You just do the setup and it's done. And SEO has to form part of what you do for your marketing on a daily basis. And I think back when we look at something like off-page SEO, it's one of those areas where it is a daily grind. It's something you've got to work at every day, and it's not just going to happen. Building backlink strategies and building up backlinks is a very difficult process, particularly in South Africa. And I will explain to you why. It's a lot harder for us here than it is for our counterparts in America or Europe. But starting off with the backlink strategy, I have to point out that leveraging digital PR is very, very important. And I still see a lot of brands, a lot of publishers still make the mistake that when they are putting out digital PR, they are not putting the right SEO building blocks in place. And that kind of means that your PR is very much a flash in the pan and doesn't add any extended value over time. And that's, not very helpful. So you've got to really consider how you leverage digital PR. If you are buying, digital PR is, there's an element sometimes where you are paying to have your PR published on a certain website or publication. If that is a digital publication and you're not inserting your links, you're effectively not helping yourself build up backlinks for an article or a PR piece that you've essentially paid for. And then you're losing out on building up those backlinks over time. So I do recommend always remember to put in, if you are doing digital PR, always remember to link back to your site so that you're giving yourself that backlink at the very least. If you're paying for that article, you should be getting that backlink. Reviewing competitive backlinks is also something that might help you find where to get other backlinks. Traditionally, we are relying on publishers, forums, and blogs to get these backlinks. But you will find now, platforms like Facebook or alternative forums have become a lot stricter in terms of their rules and their regulations and their community control. And that has brought about new policies, and some of those policies don't necessarily allow us to do the backlinking we used to be able to do with forums. Forums used to be a big part of link building. In some ways negatively, but again, there should be a positive element to link building within forums. And unfortunately, we don't get that as much as we used to. So we now need to review our competitors' backlinks to see if there are any good sources of backlinks that we can rely on as well. One of the easiest backlinks you can target for any business across the globe is online business directories. But this doesn't mean you can only sign up to 1 or 2 or 3. You ultimately have to have a list of at least 10 to 20 different online business directories. And you want to make sure you open up those accounts and get your business listings on each of those sites. And that will already help to strengthen your backlink strategy. That, to me, the online business directories can act as a really good foundation for starting your backlink strategy. Guest blogs is a great idea, and you're going to hear this come up a lot in terms of the advice that many SEO professionals try to give. In South Africa, guest blogging is not as much as a career as it is in places like America and possibly Europe. But I'm not saying that it's not possible. It's just going to take a little bit more time for you to find whether you have thought leaders in your industry, in your niche, that you might be able to partner with, collaborate with, and to possibly develop guest blogs. Either you can get a thought leader to come in and develop a guest blog for your site itself. But ideally what you want is you want to find a thought leader that has a platform of their own where you can possibly get them to publish some content relevant to your brand, your products, and link it back to your site so that you can get that backlink. The tricky part with the backlink strategy is that you ultimately want to get backlinks from websites that have a very high domain authority. And that's where it becomes very difficult for us here, because most websites, and even if you dig deep and you start looking at our online publishers here in South Africa, many of them don't actually have very, very high domain ranking, domain authority, and your backlink profile impacts that score. Again, I don't want to highlight the domain authority score too much, because it's a unique score that comes from a proprietary score that comes from something like SEMrush. Each SEO tool has their own sort of way of looking at domain authority or domain ranking. They're not all identical. But what domain authority does is it gives you a good idea of whether a website does actually have a strong backlink strategy. So when it comes to backlink strategies, I want to say to you guys that, just enter into backlink strategies with caution. Don't let anyone sell you on a backlink strategy too quickly, especially if it's built on an idea that is not taking our localized conditions into consideration. The reality of SEO is the reality of any successful endeavor. It will take strategic, consistent, and sufficient efforts to rank well. And unfortunately for South Africa, we don't have the same SEO economy as America and Europe and other parts of the world, but we can still get there. We just need to work on it every day, strategically, consistently, until we get to the right point. So, yeah, that is essentially the SEO process for business. When I come back to this diagram just as a little bit of a recap to explain that you never do technical optimization once, and you never do on-page optimization once. Off-page optimization, there's a lot of building blocks you can put in place. But when it comes to social media, when it comes to a backlink strategy, there's still a lot of daily content development that needs to go into building up, your off-page optimization. And you will often find as you change your website, as you consider upgrading your website or migrating your website, you will have to go back and reconsider technical SEO implications. You will have to go back and double check your SEO basics are still in place. And then you will have to go and review your on-page optimization and off-page optimization again and again. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you for your questions. And I hope that you find the insight that you're looking for in terms of taking your SEO forward.